Hi, this is Robert from Retro Car Guide 530 LLC. Today I'm going to be performing an oil change on a 2017 Kia Soul. It's a brownstone package Kia Soul. It's my wife's vehicle. It's her daily driver, and it's time to do the second oil change on the vehicle. And I'll go through the supplies that I have here to perform the change and the process to do it, which is fairly straightforward. It's not that unusual for a Kia Soul, but I'll go into a slight variation I'm going to perform because of the type of size of the oil filter that is here and the wrench that I don't have that will fit that. So after the intro and the information disclaimer, please come back and we'll go through these items that are here, and then we'll get to changing the oil. Thanks for coming to the Retro Car Guy 530 YouTube and Instagram TV channels. Please review the automotive information, repair, and modification guidelines on this screen. Seek the advice of a repair professional if you're unsure how to perform any repair or modification safely and correctly. All repairs and modifications are performed at your own risk. As I stated in the intro, this is for a 2017 Kia Soul, and it's a brownstone package version of the Kia Soul. So it's got the chocolate style brown on the lower section, white on the top. So it's my wife's car, her daily driver, but it's time for maintenance on this vehicle. It's time for the second oil change. And what I'm going to be doing is following the normal maintenance schedule. There's a severe schedule and a normal one. In the way she drives it, she's definitely following the behavior of a normal maintenance schedule. And for this particular vehicle, it has the 2-liter non-turbo, the naturally aspirated non-turbo version of the engine. So the schedule maintenance states that you should change it at worst case scenario 7,500 miles or 12 months. The 1.6 liter turbo engine does have a requirement to change the oil at least every 6 months with a reduced mileage as well. So check the schedule that applies to your engine. So make sure you review your owner's manual, check the chapter in there that covers the maintenance schedule, which I believe is chapter 8, and at least in the 2017 manual. And make sure you find the section that applies to your engine. Here are the items I'll be using during this oil change. I'll be using a Kia oil filter, part number on the right part of the screen here. Drain plug washer, a new one, which is also the part numbers on the screen. A clean funnel to pour the oil into the top side of the engine. The oil being used is Castrol Ultra Clean GTX 5W20 for this particular 2-liter engine, same oil as used by the dealership. 17mm wrench to remove the drain plug from the drain pan. To remove the oil filter, I don't have a socket cap style wrench to fit it, so I'll be removing the plastic pan to gain access to it for better videotaping, and to use the wrench on the table there. Brake clean to clean up any excess oil that was dropped during this oil change in a well-ventilated area. Garbage bags to protect the garage floor. Oil drain pan, of course, and gloves and glasses for your skin and eye protection. Before I do anything with the vehicle as far as draining anything, I want to inspect the oil level, which you should be checking your oil at least every month, but probably every couple of weeks. Depending on your driving schedule, if you're driving a lot of miles, you probably, like I said, at least every month, as well as checking tire pressure, normal maintenance checks on your vehicle. But before I drain the oil out, I'd like to have a good idea of what's going on with the engine. So let's go ahead. This is a flat surface the vehicle's sitting on now, and it's been sitting here not running for the past couple of hours, so the oil should have all drained back into the bottom oil pan. So we're going to take a look and look at the marks, and yeah, it definitely is getting dirty, but it is at the upper end of the full mark. So I will clean that off and do that again just to make sure we get the same interpretation of the reading. I usually give it a few seconds to let the oil come up and stabilize. And same thing. So we've been good. There's been no consumption of oil in this particular engine. I have not added any oil to this engine since the last oil change, so that's a good indication of general health on the engine. But it is getting dirty. So that's definitely time to start changing it. So let's put this in for the moment. The other area I like to take a look at is not only what condition the oil is on the dipstick there, but I want to take a look at what the oil looks like on the bottom of the filler cap. If there's water getting into it, such as a head gasket leak of some sort, or coolant's getting in there, you may see some sort of foaming action, some foam present on here, and you should want to take a look inside here to see if there's any indication of any foam or anything, but that's just standard oil. So that's another good indication this engine's doing pretty well. This engine has about 8,700 or 8,800 miles on it. I'll note that down for the maintenance schedule once I get done with the oil change, but that looks pretty good. So there's nothing to deter me from performing the oil change, such as if there are signs of leakage or foaming or something like that, that would warrant taking the vehicle in or having someone that knows the proper things to check for head gasket leaks or any sort of coolant leaks that were getting into the oil system. So right now I'll just loosely put that on there. We're on the bottom side of the engine now. I have it up on my ramps, but with the Kia Soul here, this 2017, here we have this bottom plastic shield, and there are two covers here that can be removed to gain access to the areas that are necessary to perform the oil change. And this one here is for the oil filter, and there's a plastic tab here. You push it backward, and there's three of them, or push them towards the center, and then that drops out. And it's good to look at the condition of this to see if there's any oil, in case the oil filter was leaking or the gasket for the oil filter is leaking. So this looks pretty dry. When I first got the vehicle, there was some seepage past the oil filter that I had to clean up. So since the oil change in January, there's been none, it looks like, so that's good. So that's where we can gain access to the oil filter. And if you had one of those oil filter cap wrenches sockets to go over the end of it, you could then just insert that up there, but then the oil will drain down and potentially get on the top here. I'm not a fan of hidden oil and the smells that they can generate. Personal pet peeve of mine, I guess. But so that's, at a minimum, you need to remove this cover to get access to the oil filter, and then there's this cover here that you again push towards the center and remove it. And again, do the same thing as far as the inspection for any oil. Look at the bottom of the oil pan itself to see if there's any need for that. So apparently, actually that's not where the drain plug is located. It does say engine oil, so it may be allowing for any draining down. The actual oil plug is here, which already has an open area with no insert for it. But again, I would like to remove the full thing, and I need to remove it to gain proper access to the oil filter to get that loosened. In theory, I should be able to do it with my hand, but again, I don't want the oil being spread around in weird areas. So let's just go ahead and remove that. So let's go through the fast forward section of me removing the screws, which are up here on the front, and there are some 10mm headed bolts around the edge of it, and then we'll take it off. Now that I have the plastic pan out from underneath the engine, I have full access to the bottom side of the engine. The oil filter is located here, of course. The oil pan is here. On the one other video I saw online where the person was changing the oil, the drain plug was actually in the front, so that must have been one of the 1.6 liters. In the 2 liter, the oil drain plug is in the back, so given the angle that I'm on the ramps with the vehicle, the oil should actually take advantage of the ramp angle here, so that should help drain out the oil. But that, of course, might induce some of the oil from as it drains out from here as we undo the oil filter, it might get on the oil pan. So you gotta make sure we clean that very well and account for the angle that the oil will be going out from the back. So when you remove the drain plug, it doesn't just, of course, drain. If you haven't changed oil on a vehicle before and you're trying this for the first time, just keep in mind that the oil, based on the weight that's in here of the oil that's in the pan, it will shoot out at an angle further out. So make sure you have your plastic bags, or which I have some garbage bags on the ground right now to protect the garage floor. And then your drain pan has to be sitting just a little bit back to capture that angle. And of course, as the oil level decreases, it starts draining more straight down. So let's go ahead and get the drain pan in place here and start removing this 17 millimeter bolt and the oil filter after that. So let's get to it. We now have the drain pan in place. It's over here to the right. You need to find one that can hold the up to 5 quarts capacity, or if you have one that's larger and it's partially full, make sure there's enough capacity in it to hold the amount to be drained out. Some of that will be in the oil filter and some will be in the pan. So let's start the draining of the oil from the oil pan. Take our 17 millimeter it shouldn't be excessively tight, but it can be a little bugger to get out sometimes. So I'm positioned where the oil can go into the pan at first. And let's not try to drop the oil plug into the oil being drained, and I seem to have that position just right. So let's take this off to the side for the moment. And I opened the cap here on the end of the drain pan to allow air to come in because it was bubbling up here on the side here. But I can't forget to tighten that before I lift it out. And definitely oil is dark, but again, I'm looking at the color and looking to see if there's any foam or any metal pieces. I'll take a look at the top of the pan here in just a moment. When we get it out from underneath the vehicle. And I'll move it just a hair here. You'll start splattering sometimes depending on how the oil coming out of the vehicle. So let's make sure as you notice, it started coming forward and down, so I had to move the oil pan just a little bit to account for that change. Now let's take a look at the drain plug, and the drain plug itself is reusable, but the aluminum washer in theory should be replaced. So I'm going to remove the washer that's on there now. Let's show you that washer, and I'm going to clean my gloves a bit. Notice I do have gloves on, and I did put protective eyewear on because oil can splatter in the strangest direction sometimes, and you don't want it in your eyes or contacting your skin. So let's take a look at this again. Make sure that there's no odd marks or threads look okay, which they are. This being only the second oil change, it should look okay. We should clean the base here where the gasket aluminum washer fits up against. And in fact, I'm going to take a little bit of this brake clean and use it on here. This is an extra amount of cleaning on it. Of course, brake clean should be used in a well-ventilated area. And the drain plug looks good. I'm going to open up the package of 10 washers that I have here and use one of them only, of course. And place the new washer on the drain plug. So that's ready to go back in when we're at the point of plugging this up. And given the angle that we're We have the vehicle at the oil drain is favorable to the back, so we should have a good amount of the oil out. I'll give it a couple more seconds here. And then with that, we'll clean it up. Initially with some brake clean, we're going to get some oil still coming out, but once we get the washer up there, we'll do another cleaning of it to make sure it's a dry surface area so that we can check for leaks later on. And that's another thing that would be nice to be able to see underneath here to see if there's any leaks going on after the change here. So let's wipe this down. And we'll still drip a little bit, but I want to make sure that the surface the washer is going against is clean as much as possible, and this should slow down the flow a bit so we can clean it just a little bit more. And this is, you don't want to get too aggressive with the drain plug because it's usually a aluminum pan or some sort of light duty pan, and it's not meant to be overly torqued, so good hand tight is good enough for this, especially because it's got the aluminum washer. It will crush that in a bit. There we go. And now I will take something to shield me just a little bit to put the brake clean on it. All right, let's move on to the oil filter now. All right, we now have the oil drain pan in the area by the oil filter. I'm going to make sure my gloves are as dry as possible here. I don't have the proper oil cap socket for this, but in theory this should only be hand tight. And the general rule of thumb is when you put a filter on and you get it where the gasket contacts, you then go no more than a 3/4 of a turn past that hand tight. So let's see what we got here. It does not seem to be the case this time. So I'm going to use my extra wrench here. Okay, that seemed to be enough to budget free. So now I should be able to hopefully do this by hand. Still a bit of a bugger, but this feels way more than 3/4 of a turn tight. Of course, I'm gonna verify. I need to move it just a hair here. And again, you don't want to be directly by the pan because the oil could bounce down and go in and bounce out. So, like that. So as you can see, we've got some oil to clean off the oil pan. And I'm going to look at the oil I'm pouring out of here. Looks good, no obvious contamination there. I'm gonna drop that in right here for the moment. Grab some rags. We'll be switching gloves here in a moment. We now have the oil filter out. I moved the cameras a little bit to get a better view of the oil filter area. And you can see that we've drained oil down in the pan on the bottom.
So that access hole that was on the plastic shield was right about here, so that's why I guess they gave access, because they knew that oil might be coming down that area. So with that, I'm going to start cleaning up this area and then cleaning up the surface that the gasket for the oil filter will go up against. So I'm going to now take some of that brake clean and again spray away from you, and again use in a well ventilated area. Making sure this is clean of any of the oil is one of the things that many service departments don't seem to take care of. So when you get the vehicle home, you look under it, then you're going, is that from this new filter or was it from before? So one of the jobs of any oil change technician should be to make sure that the area being worked on is as clean or cleaner than when it came into the shop. There's a lot of nooks and crannies up here, so let's make sure we get all that. All right, let's get a clean rag to go and clean up the gasket surface here. And spray away. This metal can be sharp, so be careful with your fingers up here. Just make sure that you're cleaning it. Don't get too aggressive because you could come away with a cut. And let's switch to a lint-free rag here to pull everything off. And this is the section where the gasket from the oil filter meets up against the engine here. So you can't just put a dry filter up in here. You need to lubricate the oil filter gasket so that it has a chance to slide a little bit as it you go through that 3/4 of a turn past the point of contact. But I think we're just about at the point where we've got it all clean and we're ready to do that. So I'm going to get some of the new oil and use that on the oil filter gasket. I've seen some people use the old oil, and whatever contaminants are in there, if there's any dirt or grime in that oil, I don't want it on the gasket for the oil filter. So let's get some new oil down here and dip a finger in there, get a little amount to run around the oil filter gasket. Here we have the new filter, and from Kia Hyundai it comes with this plastic cover to keep the contaminants out. The gasket is dry. So some oil filters will come with the gasket having some sort of lubricant already on it. In this case it's a dry one, so I'm going to dip my finger in the oil here to get just a little bit on the glove here and run it along the edge here of the gasket so that, let me get it in view in both cameras here. So I'm making sure that the gasket has some lubrication there. I don't want any excess here. This is dry up here, so we're going to go ahead and insert the new filter. Some will fill this up with oil, but it's not necessary all the time. You can if you want. It just matters then you have to balance that as well. So we'll screw it on, and when we get to the point of contact, which is right there, I am then basically where it says Hyundai Kia Motors, I'm going to turn it 3/4 of a turn so that is facing towards the back, towards the oil pan. So let's go ahead and do this by hand. I Should be able to do this with the gloves. So quarter turn, half turn, and that's 3/4 of a turn. And the Hyundai Kia Motors label is facing back there. Sometimes you can mark with a marker right here, the point, and so you can keep track of that. If you're using the socket, oil filter socket, you could do the same thing with that. Just count how many turns, quarter turns you do past the point of contact. So with that, I'm going to perform a little bit more cleaning, make sure that we're fully dry. First, I'm going to put my cap back on my clean oil. Move that out of the way. And again, make sure that there's no oil left over from before. Because after the oil change, when I inspect the vehicle, I want to be able to look down in this area, because I will usually use a mirror and inspection mirror and a light to go down to this point to look at what's going on with the oil filter on most vehicles. Luckily, this one is facing where the direction of flow is down if any leaks occur. Some engines have the filter on the side of the engine, which it leaks down the side of the engine and makes it quite difficult to keep clean, but this one at least will drain down. But it will go to that inspection cover, which I showed you before, that round one. So if you're pulling that out and taking a look, you should look at the bottom side of that or top side of the plastic to see if there's any oil in that. And if you happen to have an inspection mirror, you can come down from the top side and go at an angle here with the flashlight to look at this area as well. So with that, we have our oil filter in place. We have our drain plug in place with its new aluminum washer. We're ready to go topside and fill the engine with brand new oil. Now we're at the point where I can pour the oil in. So let's start doing that. Make sure that you've got a funnel that you can fit into the oil inlet here on the top end of the engine. It's going to be a little bit of an issue up here holding everything, but I have marked the side of this container to the point where that would be the 4.23 US quarts. So when I'm that much oil remaining in the container, then I know the engine should be full. So let's go ahead and start pouring. Make sure you don't pour at a pace that's too far in excess of the flow capacity down into the engine. You just want to pour enough and let some of the air escape. You're not in a race. All right, that should put us at the required 4.23 US quarts. So let's go ahead and check the oil level. Since we're at an angle here, of course, this is not going to be a true oil level check. I just want to make sure we at least have some oil in the dipstick, because there should be some at this point, given the angle we're at. Yep, and we're down in the lower section of the 1 quart zone, so we're good. All right, the oil looks reasonable given the angle that the engine is at. Let's go ahead and pull this funnel out. Put that off to the side. Make sure that you clean it out for any excess oil that's still in the funnel. We're going to clean the bottom side of this oil filler cap. Make sure there's no dirt up here, which there isn't. And let's install the cap, and there should be a couple clicks here when it's in position. Now that we have the oil in the engine and we put the
filler cap back in place. We have the dipstick back in place, and everything's tight on the bottom. We still don't have the plastic cover back on yet, but I'm going to go ahead and take it for a test drive, and you can drive it without that plastic cover on it. I'm going to drive it, come back, and then inspect everything underneath, and as long as everything's still clean and dry, I'll put that plastic cover back on, which was a few 10mm bolts and some plastic pin rivets, retainers, and with some Phillips screws on the front side of it right by the bumper fascia. And that will go back on in just a couple seconds. So with that, I'm going to cut the video off in this section, go take it for a test drive, and if everything's good, do what I just said, put that plastic pan back on, and we will call this done. I hope you found this video informative on how to perform an oil change on your Kia Soul. It's not that difficult of a task. It's a common procedure like most other vehicles. But the access to the bottom side of the engine, I showed you that there is a plastic pan on the bottom that you can remove if you want. And in this case, I did take it off to make it easier for you to see what's on the bottom side of the engine. In theory, you can perform the oil change with that in place, but removing those plastic covers that are removable on the bottom, I don't know if I'm a fan of that or not, because again, the oil can get in places that you may not see. And I don't usually like oil just randomly showing up on or making smells after it gets warm. So usually if I can gain further access, I typically remove excess panels that give me better access. And that's what I did in this case. That's up to you, personal preference. But make sure that you keep your area clean where you perform the change. Make sure you dispose of the oil with the approved recycling procedures in your area for hazardous waste. And that includes the oil filter. In California, they will take in the oil and the oil filter as part of the hazardous waste program in this local area. So with what's in my drain pan and that oil filter, I'll put in a container to take it to that on the next collection day. So with that, we have the oil change done. The cost for everything is actually about $5 to $10 cheaper than it was at the dealership. The number of drain plug washers that I bought, there was 10 of them, so I have 9 more to go. So in theory, that's $1. The oil was about $15, and the filter was about $5. So it wasn't that expensive to perform the change, and the recycling of the oil and filter is free here in California. So not an expensive change, and this way I also got to take a look at the bottom side of the engine to see how the engine is performing, see if there's any other leaks. I'm usually pretty curious about that. Some people are, some people aren't. I'm always curious at how it looks like underneath those plastic covers. And I think I mentioned before there was a small leak on the original filter on this vehicle, so I was just curious to make sure everything was still clean. And it looked overall it looked just fine. And so with that, I hope you found this video helpful. And if you like the content of this video and other videos on my channel, please like this video with the like button on YouTube, and leave a comment if you have any questions on this video on YouTube or on Instagram TV, and I'll respond as quickly as I can. And please subscribe to the channel on YouTube, and follow me on Instagram, YouTube, and my Facebook page, which are all available through Retro Car Guy 530. So thanks for coming and spending your time viewing my video. Thanks for watching.
If you like this video, hit the thumbs up button. If you're stopping by the channel for the first time and you want to, please subscribe. Click that bell icon to get notified when I upload new videos. Please follow Retro Car Guy 530 on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Thanks for taking the time to visit the channel, and I'll see you in the next one.